Well, good morning, everyone. This is Amanda Bergson-Shilcock here at the Welcoming Center for New Pennsylvanians, and we're just delighted to be here this morning as part of the March for Innovation. Joining me this morning is my colleague Herman Nyamunga. Herman, can you say hello so we can check sound levels? Oh, that's not good. We're not hearing you, Herman, so we're going to do a little tech support and see what's going on there. Also joining me are my colleagues Peter Gonzalez, Olga Chernoff-Gittin, and Yana Chernoff. Can you all say hello so we can check your sound levels?
Hello, can you hear us?
Terrific.
Hi, Herman.
Hi, Amanda. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thanks, Herman, and thanks, Peter.
You're welcome.
So just a little by way of introduction, many of you may be familiar with the Welcoming Center. Some of you may not. So I wanted to give you a little bit of context. We're based here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And as I mentioned, we're really delighted to be part of today's March for Innovation. We are part of Pennsylvania United for Immigration Reform, which is a coalition of organizations across Pennsylvania advocating for immigration reform. And we have a number of terrific guests, as you've started to see already, who will be joining us today to talk about this issue. So we're going to start with Peter, and Peter is the president and CEO of the Welcoming Center. Peter, can you tell our viewers a little bit about the Welcoming Center?
Sure. So the Welcoming Center is a private nonprofit organization. It was founded about 10 years ago to help newcomers to our region connect to jobs, to help them build businesses, and to get the education and training that they need to succeed through our ESL classes, our GED classes, our civics classes, and our ongoing technical assistance programs.
Terrific. And why did the Welcoming Center decide to participate in today's March for Innovation?
Well, having served 10,000 immigrants in the past 10 years at the Welcoming Center, we know a couple of things. One, that it's a very difficult and complicated immigration process just to get to the United States. But it's equally as important to focus on, once you have arrived, making sure that there are programs in place to help connect immigrants who are here to opportunities. And we're hoping to see comprehensive immigration reform incorporate that approach, looking at immigrant integration as a key component to the reform bill.
Great, and I'm glad you mentioned that because we're going to be talking quite a bit about what that actually means going forward. Just a little context for those of you who may not be following every twist and turn of the legislation. Currently, the U.S. Senate is considering an immigration bill that's about 1,100 pages long at last count. It might be even up to about 1,200 pages with last night's amendments. And the bill is advancing in the Senate. Most recently, last night, it had a vote of 67 in favor of moving it forward procedurally. And it's really been the subject of quite substantive and interesting remarks by a number of senators. We're going to touch base a bit on that as we go through our conversation now. I want to talk a little bit about employers. The March for Innovation is highlighting the importance of immigrant workers to both American-owned businesses, but also immigrant-owned businesses here in the U.S. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So with us to do that are staff from the Welcoming Center's Employment Department, Olga Chernoff-Gittin and Yana Chernoff. Yana and Olga, can you tell us a bit about the different industries that you're working with? We hear a lot in the news about immigrants working in agriculture or working in hospitality. Can you tell us about some of the industries that you all are working in?
Well, we work with more than 250 employers in Great Philadelphia area. More popular for us industry are manufacturing, hospitalities, retail, healthcare, and also it's like a new field for us. It's a gaming industry, because in Philadelphia we have a few new casinos
Great. So obviously that's really an issue where there's widespread need for immigrant workers across multiple sectors of the economy. We hear a lot about the different skills that immigrant job seekers bring, but of course they also bring connections to businesses and contacts in their home country. Can you talk a little bit about that? Give us maybe an example.
We have a few examples in this to answer on this question, but I would like to bring one. We had one of our job seekers. His name is Luis. He came to United States from Colombia, where he was very successful lawyer. And we tried to figure out not just still keep him in this field, because it's take a while to be a lawyer in the United States. We tried to figure out how we can match his skills to some new career for him. We employed him as marketing manager in one of manufacturing with whom we work, and it was very successful match because Luis was able to bring a lot of his contacts from Colombia, from Chile, from Ecuador, from countries with whom he had a connection from his previous experience. And right now, this company is so successful to work with his new contacts.
So, of course, in that example, that's an immigrant who had a professional career in his home country. He was an attorney. He came here to the U.S. It wasn't immediately possible for him to restart a career as a lawyer, and you were able to help him pivot and take on this position as a marketing manager. And then with those Latin American contacts that he had, he was able to then build that those sales relationships for his new company.
Yeah.
Of course, it's also the case that sometimes immigrants are able to use the skills that they brought from their original field. So, Olga, can you tell us an example or a way in which you've seen that happen?
Sure, I'd be happy to. It's always encouraging for us and wonderful for the client to be able to take their skills that they've already acquired and to apply them to a job here in the U.S. A couple of examples that really jump out at me. We had a woman from Algeria who was an office administrator for a British oil company working in Algeria, and she was responsible for making travel arrangements as well as touristy excursions for the VIPs coming into Algeria. She speaks 5 languages, and when she came to the US, she was at a loss. She has all these skills, all this experience, and nowhere to really apply it to. And we were able to find her a job as an office administrator at one of Philadelphia's largest hospitals, doing exactly the same thing. She's now making travel plans for patients and their families coming to treatment to Philadelphia, as well as helping them to relax and get their mind off the stressful situations by familiarizing them with the interesting things to see here in Philadelphia. Another example, more recently, we had a Haitian police officer who came to the US, and we were able to place him in a security position at one of Philadelphia's casinos.
Okay, so those are some great examples. And again, if you're just joining us, to recap briefly, we're joining you today from the Welcoming Center for New Pennsylvanians here in Philadelphia. We're a nonprofit economic development organization that works with immigrant job seekers, entrepreneurs, adult students, and others to help build what we call shared prosperity among immigrant and American-born community members. You've just been hearing from Yana Chernoff and Olga Chernoff-Gittin in the Welcoming Center's Employment Department. They work with more than 500 work-authorized immigrant job seekers each year to help them find employment and get matched with American employers who need their skills and abilities. Also sitting with them is Peter Gonzalez, President and CEO of the Welcoming Center. And Peter, I'm wondering if you might be able to give us a little context about how you came to do this work. What brought you to the Welcoming Center?
Sure. I've been practicing immigration law for about 7 years before I joined the board of directors. That was about 2 years ago. I was asked to join the board of directors, and up to that point I had been working with people from all over the world that were coming to the United States, either to reunite with their family members or to open up new businesses or to connect with job opportunities. And frankly, when I arrived at the Welcoming Center and took a tour, I was so impressed with what was already happening in a nonprofit environment to help connect so many people in our region to opportunities. And then, frankly, I met all the wonderful people that work here, that I felt compelled to spend more of my time at the Welcoming Center, and discovered there was incredible opportunity to not just help individuals, but to help the region to embrace the talent that is coming from around the world to our city. And so that was sort of what motivated me to arrive and stay here. A couple of things I think are important is the Welcoming Center. It's a private nonprofit. It was actually founded by a citizen who herself was an Irish immigrant, came to the United States 43 years ago, and she came with a degree as a physical therapist, and was challenged could not sit for the licensing exam here in Pennsylvania to practice physical therapy, but was able to teach at the University of Pennsylvania future physical therapists. Eventually found her way by getting licensed in North Carolina, and then through reciprocity being licensed in Pennsylvania. And that was 43 years ago. That process still exists today. Those barriers and hurdles that skilled immigrants from around the world continue to face. And I was very impressed by how this organization was inspired from that personal experience that Ann O'Callahan had 43 years ago when she first arrived. And that there's a group of people here that are committed to tearing down those barriers and trying to facilitate people's pathway to success in the United States.
Okay. Well, thank you, Peter. I think that's helpful context for people to have. Of course, we're here today talking about the March for Innovation and talking about the immigration bill that's currently being considered in the Senate. So I'm going to take it back to Jana and Olga for a minute. I know some of our viewers may be curious about your own immigration stories. Can you share a little snippet of your story and then say, if you were talking to Congress right now, what would you most want your senator to know about the journey to becoming an American?
Sure. Yana came to the U.S. from Ukraine in 1993 as a refugee. And in Ukraine, she was a teacher of Russian language and literature. So she came to the U.S. and realized that that's not the most in-demand job in Philadelphia. So it was up to her to reassess her skills to see where else they may fit. So after working entry-level positions while learning English, what she realized is she really wanted to help other immigrants prevent the mistakes that she made and that she saw immigrants were making around her in their search for a better life. And she for 16 years now, she's been working in direct job placement, helping work authorized immigrants not just find jobs, but also set short-term and long-term goals for themselves in their careers. She guides them on their journey of finding a new self in America, and by helping immigrant professionals find out if their job isn't a direct match for Philadelphia market, what can they do that takes advantage of their skills and their experience, and how can they apply to a new career, a new professional job here in the U.S. As far as speaking to the senators in Congress, I think the most important thing we'd like them to understand is that funding for direct job placement is essential. The sooner that a new American leaves their street, their little community, the sooner they join the greater American workplace, that's when they learn the most English. That's when they start contributing to the economy by paying taxes, by becoming consumers. It's essential for immigrants to have life-sustaining jobs, to be able to become not just immigrants, but new Americans.
Great.
It's work for both ways. American can see the real face of immigrants.
Great. Well, thank you both. And Olga, thank you for that preview. We're going to be talking about the immigrant integration chapter in the immigration bill a little bit later in this chat. I want to turn now to one of our other guests. And we've been joined now by a colleague from the CEO Council for Growth here in Philadelphia, an affiliate of the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce. And that's Claire Greenwood. So Claire, I'm going to ask you to just first test sound levels to make sure that the microphone is picking you up. So can you say hello for us?
Sure. Hi, Amanda.
Great.
You okay?
Perfect. We're wonderful. So Claire, can you just tell us a little bit about what the CEO Council is?
Sure. So the CEO Council is a group of higher education, business, and civic leaders, about 55 or so folks who are really focused on how to expand and enhance the economy of our Greater Philadelphia region. So I know today's iMarch is about Pennsylvania specifically, but our focus is across southeastern Pennsylvania, southern New Jersey, and Newcastle County in Delaware. And we do a handful of things, but really all focused on driving how we continue to get economic growth in this area. We've done a series of actionable research reports over the last number of years, really focused on how we can advance large-scale projects in the region. An enormous part of our agenda really is focused on a multifaceted advocacy agenda, really about the federal role in what we're talking about today, innovation, talent, as well as regional mobility, which are all critical items for advancing our region's economy. And then we also have an oversight. This group has an oversight role over Select Greater Philadelphia, which is the business marketing and attraction arm of the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce that's really focused on trying to recruit companies to make a location decision in the Greater Philadelphia region.
Great. And just to help our viewers understand a bit better, you're affiliated with the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, and can you give us a sense of the scale you're talking about? Approximately how big is the chamber?
So our Greater Philadelphia Chamber has more than 5,000 members, so it really is the large chamber of our region, again, across southern Pennsylvania, southern New Jersey, and northern Delaware. So it's quite a large organization with lots of members, and the council in some ways is a subset of that, but we do have members that are mostly large companies and higher education institutions in the region.
Great. And I understand that one of the priorities for the CEO Council is to increase the number of visas that are available to students who graduate from American universities and have a STEM degree, that is science, technology, engineering, or math.
Yep.
Tell us why that's a priority for you.
Well, obviously, I mean, the simple answer is first and foremost, it's important to our members to find that talent. There certainly this occupations that require a STEM degree are highly in demand currently in the marketplace. While we don't have numbers around that anecdotally, that's where we continue to hear folks talk about pain points in their hiring. But we also know that more than 50% of the residents in our region are employed in what would be considered sort of knowledge or innovation-based industries. So it's sort of a mix of what we know from our membership and also a mix of what we know the data tells us. And certainly we want to, as part of our agenda, is always building on the assets we have here in our region. And there are more than 100 colleges and universities in the Greater Philadelphia area. And for our region, I think we have a real competitive advantage if we can figure out how, and I think this bill gets us closer, to retain some of those students who are being educated here in our institutions, to keep that knowledge, that potentially intellectual property, and the opportunity that brings to advance the economy here.
Great, and that's a very good reminder because, of course, there's been some recent research on the percentage of, for example, new patents that are made by immigrant inventors, as well as other contributions that immigrant researchers play in developing new products.
Yep.
So there's another important priority that the CEO Council has, and that's around entrepreneurship. Can you talk a bit about why that's a priority and what that means to you?
Sure. I think while the CEO Council tends to be made up of these large companies and organizations, I think our members clearly understand that for our region to thrive, entrepreneurs and small businesses are going to be the real job creators and growth going forward. I think certainly, I think you mentioned some of that research has also indicated that a higher percentage of entrepreneurs are immigrants, and I think we need to make sure, clearly the legislation gets us closer, but we need to make sure that there's a pathway for folks to start a business in this country and create jobs for both immigrants as well as United States citizens. And I think that that's an important, again, important for the competitiveness of our region. So it's clearly important to the business community, but it's going to be critical for us to take advantage of these opportunities to continue to grow our economy going forward. And I think that's really what the CO Council is really trying to focus on. So what are whether it's the provisions in this bill or the broader focus, how can we continue to grow? And I think that entrepreneurs and small businesses is a critical component of our future growth.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for giving us that context. We're going to talk more about entrepreneurship in just a minute, and we're going to talk about entrepreneurship at all levels, not simply for larger businesses or tech startups. But I want to go back now to Peter Gonzalez, President and CEO of the Welcoming Center. Peter is going to be with us for just a bit more of this chat before he goes off to another engagement. And Peter, I wanted to go back to you to hear a little bit about an award that we give here at the Welcoming Center, which is called the Realizing the American Dream Award. Can you talk a bit about the award and who has received it?
Sure. So the Realizing the American Dream Award is something that the Welcoming Center bestows on an immigrant who has achieved a high level of success in business, and not just in their own business, but also in the community at large. And specifically to somebody who has come from humble beginnings, has made the journey to the United States, and has created a company that has had an impact both economically and socially and culturally in our region. This past year, we gave the honor to Rudy Carson, who is the founder and CEO of a company called Connexa, which is now an IBM company. IBM was so impressed with Rudy and his company Connexa that they purchased the company this past December. The organization, or the company that he built, was focused not just on helping businesses succeed, but also the focus on helping individuals succeed, and that it was essentially a retention, recruitment, and training HR company that has grown globally in 25 years with campuses around the world. They're based out in Wayne, Pennsylvania, right outside of the city of Philadelphia. And they have a few thousand employees worldwide. Last year, we gave the same award to Dr. Song Li, who's an immigrant from China, who founded Frontage Labs, which, as of a year ago when we gave him this award, had created 170 jobs in Chester County in the pharmaceutical clinical research field, with another 100+ employees based in China. And when we met a few months ago, he was showing me Frontage Labs out in Exton, Pennsylvania. Was a remarkable facility that was beginning to explore partnerships with hospital institutions in our area to provide that clinical research. One of the things that he pointed out very proudly was that 75% of his employees had master's degrees or PhDs, and many of them were immigrant talent that had come to the United States for their education, and he was able to create opportunities for them to stay and become part of the fabric of our region's economy and cultural life.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that, Peter, and thank you for being able to join us for as much of the time this morning as you were able to. We're going to move now to our colleague Herman Nyamunga. Peter, we appreciate your time with us this morning. Herman, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about entrepreneurs in a bit of a different context, because not every entrepreneur is going to be starting a multi-million-dollar business that IBM is later going to acquire. And not every entrepreneur is necessarily going to build a business that employs 170 people. But they can be really important innovators and neighborhood revitalizers. So let's start just a little bit by talking about your own experience as an entrepreneur. Can you tell us a bit about your experience as a business owner? Oop, Herman, I got to make sure you're unmuted. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Being an entrepreneur in America as an immigrant is something that is very challenging, and I have my own personal story of starting a logistics business that was very difficult at the beginning. I encountered numerous challenges, especially in areas of the licensing, the permits that you need to run a transport business, and also in terms of the kind of insurance liabilities that you have to carry to be able to conduct that business. And this was very different from what I was used to when I was running my logistics business back in Kenya. And
So,
it's a challenge that I believe that each and every immigrant who immigrates into the United States and wants to start a business, whether it is in the food industry, whether it is in the tech industry, every level, those challenges are there.
So when we talk about immigration reform, obviously we spend a lot of time talking about visa backlogs, and we spend a lot of time talking about issues around people who need a pathway to citizenship. There are also people who are making investments in our communities now, revitalizing a vacant storefront or launching a small business, perhaps originally from their kitchen. So Herman, can you tell us a bit, after running your businesses, you also came here to do an MBA degree, and now you use both your business experience and your educational background in working with immigrant entrepreneurs. So can you tell us a little bit about your work today, and who are these entrepreneurs that you're working with?
Yeah, just to touch on that a little bit, I've had the experience of starting a businesses both here in the United States and outside the United States. And in both areas, I encounter the challenges that we encounter are numerous. They might not be the same. And the advantage that I have after undergoing an MBA education here in the United States is that it provided me with the skills and tools that I can now use to deal with those challenges and problems that I faced and that many small businesses face. And I use those skills to service clients that come through our program every day.
So obviously one of the big points of contention in the Senate immigration bill is what contributions look like. Are only educated immigrants the ones who can make an economic contribution to this country? But of course, some of the immigrant entrepreneurs that you're working with might not have a lot of formal education, but they are making contributions to the community and to the neighborhoods. Can you give us an example of one of those business owners and talk a little bit about his business?
Okay, in terms of migrant contribution to the economic development of the area, you can look at it in three levels. Generally, number one is that immigrants move into communities that are dilapidated. They renovate those properties and convert them into vibrant communities and commercial corridors. The other contribution they make is that they start businesses and create employment in those communities where they do business. And the third one is that they also are customers to businesses in general. And the best example I can give is one business owner that I work with in one of the corridors in Philadelphia called Woodland Avenue. His name is Hassan. Hassan is an immigrant who came to the US and decided that for him to realize his American dream, he needed to start a business. And he started his business over 10 years ago. And now he's one of the people who specializes in importing specialty food into the area. And it does not only do importation, he also buys a lot of US-made products, which he sells back in his home country because US products are very popular. So what you see in Hassan is somebody who is practicing micro import export at a very low level. And sometimes you start wondering that given the fact that there's so many immigrant businesses like him who are doing the same thing that he's doing, you can imagine the kind of impact they are creating in those communities.
So that's a great point. Micro import and export is something we maybe don't hear about quite as much. We think about import export as, you know, a huge container ship coming over with massive quantities of materials for a big chain retailer. But in the example you're giving, for those of our viewers who may not be familiar with Philadelphia, Woodland Avenue is a commercial corridor in the southwest part of the city that's extraordinarily diverse. It's diverse racially and ethnically. It has residential neighborhoods near the commercial corridor. And it has traditionally, since before the United States was a country even, been a place where newcomers would often operate businesses. So with Hassan's business, Herman, can you give us an example of some of the kinds of specialty food that he's importing? What does that mean in this context? What kind of specialty food?
Specialty food is food that is mostly consumed by immigrants who live in different areas. And in the case of Hassan, the food that he brings in is mostly consumed by people from West Africa, who are so many in this region. And so it's a frozen cassava, which is also called yuca in another language. And so that is something that is now becoming more popular and it's becoming trendy. So if you go to places like Bahama Breeze, which is like a national top of the line restaurant, you can actually have a meal of yuca and some other stuff.
Great. So let me ask you the same question I asked Yana and Olga. We're here as part of the March for Innovation. We're talking about why immigration reform is important for Pennsylvania and important for our region. If you had the opportunity to talk directly to one of our senators, what would you tell him about why immigration reform is important in Pennsylvania?
I think the point I'll stress to them is that immigrants are an asset. Okay? And especially in the state of Pennsylvania, where we've been experiencing population decline. Our businesses are gonna need more customers. We're gonna need more people to create businesses. And we're gonna need, and that is where the immigrants comes in. They come in, they start businesses that employ people. They get jobs and pay taxes. They move into dilapidated communities and revitalize them, and that is good for everybody.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We're going to go back now. I'm going to ask each of our other panelists a question, and then I'm going to open it up to the floor for questions. You're welcome to submit your questions in the chat window, which you should see at the side of your screen. And you can submit your question to any panelists or to everyone, and we will do our best to get to as many as we can. So let me go back now to Claire. And Claire, you know, we're an immigration advocacy organization, so nobody's really surprised that we have a position on immigration reform or that we're interested in this issue. The Chamber and the CEO Council, as you mentioned, are really focused on economic growth and strength. So why is this something, you know, you've talked about some of the specific issues before. You know, why did you take time out of your day today to come be part of this March for Innovation? What's your place at the table here?
Sure. Well, I would say probably about a year ago or more, maybe almost 2 years ago, we really started to look at our agenda as a whole and understand, really frankly, what was missing there. And really what was missing was a focus on innovation, entrepreneurship, small business growth, and understanding the things that our organization and our membership could do to influence, you know, public policy at the national level to try to support to support those things. You know, that's obviously comes in basic and translational research funding to our primary tier 1 research institutions in the region, but it also comes in the form of, you know, the issues that we're talking about today. So taking these assets, both from our higher education institutions and newcomers generally, and figuring out how we can create a better policy environment that gives us a competitive advantage. We did take a look at some of the data just for ourselves to understand what the impact individuals, you know, newcomers have on our region, and you know, it's pretty interesting. And just a few things. Greater Philadelphia's immigrants are more likely to hold a college degree than native residents. Obviously, that's part and parcel to the discussion we're having today. They tend to be more educated. We have a large population of foreign-born students at our institutions here, 4.5%, almost 5% of all students, but in particular, over 10% of graduate student enrollment is of foreign-born. So we sort of clearly saw that as it relates to innovation, entrepreneurship, and business growth, this bill and the conversation around it are critical components to leveraging the assets that we have in our region for our future growth and success.
Great. That's wonderful. And thank you for adding those extra facts and figures in there. For those of you who may be interested in more detailed information on immigration in Pennsylvania, I should mention that the Welcoming Center website does have a number of data snapshots. So you can visit welcomingcenter.org and click on the Publications tab, and you'll see a whole host of different publication snapshots for different congressional districts, for the state as a whole, and for various counties within the state. So certainly if you're interested in following up on that, that's a resource. I also wanted to mention we're live tweeting this morning on both the Welcoming Center Twitter account, which is just @WelcomingCenter, but also on my Twitter account, which is @AmandaWelcoming. So if for any reason the chat function here isn't working for you and you want to tweet a question to us instead, please feel free to do that. And if you're watching this and something has struck you as particularly interesting or useful, please tweet it. And please use the hashtags IMarch and PA for Pennsylvania, to make sure that we can find your tweet and we can retweet it and share it with a broader audience. So I'm going to go back now to my colleagues Olga and Jana. We're going to talk just a little bit about a national coalition that the Welcoming Center is involved with called Immigrant. Immigrant is a national coalition focused on skilled immigrant integration, or as Peter was saying earlier, what happens after the green card. Let's say we've done away with the visa backlogs, and we've done away with the challenges around foreign students not being able to get permanent ability to stay here. We've set up entrepreneur visas. What happens if somebody comes here as an engineer, as a doctor, and doesn't immediately have a network or a pathway to plug into to figure out how to resume that career in the United States? And I'm going to ask Olga and Jana to talk just a little bit about the Welcoming Center's career counseling services. Olga mentioned before we have what we call a sort of short-term goal and long-term goal that we work on with job seekers. But how do those sort of career services reflect something that we might want to see in this broader immigration bill, right? So the broader immigration bill has a chapter on immigrant integration. It has a chapter saying, hey, states and localities, the process doesn't end when somebody gets a green card. So Olga and Jana, can you talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Sure. As you mentioned, getting a permission to work in the U.S. is just the beginning, and it's the beginning of a very long and difficult process. Because while you may have the education necessary while you may have the knowledge, you don't know how to apply that knowledge. A big part of that is learning how to get a job in the U.S. An Algerian or Ukrainian CV is very different from an American resume, And that may be your first obstacle to even getting through the door for an interview. So what we here in the Welcoming Center do is we do what's called soft skills training. This is our crash course in American business culture. How do you get a job and how do you hold on to a job? Something as time-consuming as a resume or something as important as a first impression. Many immigrants are not aware that American human resource managers make their first impression may take as little as 16 seconds. And in that 16-second studies show that's when the manager decides if they want to hire you or not. Everything wonderful about you say after those 16 seconds only adds to their opinion of you or makes them think twice. Or things such as a handshake. In many countries, a woman's handshake is supposed to reflect her femininity. Whereas we say here, nobody wants a dead fish. They want to see that you're confident and energetic. What the Welcoming Center has also done is we've put together 4 amazing manuals, which are also available on our website, about the time needed to invest in licensing and also the job search for several different professions that are popular with immigrant professionals. Currently, we have manuals for teachers, IT professions, accountants, and engineers. And then what we also do is after the hour-long soft skills training, we sit down with the person, we give them what we feel they need most, which is time to sit and explain what they want to do, and we tell them the steps they need to get there. A really good example is, while you may be a talented doctor from abroad, you need time to complete perhaps your residency all over again here in the US. In the meantime, perhaps there's something else that you can do that's medically related. Or similarly, if you're an engineer in your home country, you might benefit from working a year or 2 in a manufacturing facility here, not because not because you don't have the skills to be an engineer, but because you have to take the licensing exam. And in the meantime, you learn how an American factory functions. You may make connections that once you have your license will be essential in helping you get a job. And then what we have is, of course, career advice, which is today your English is low, we'll place you in an entry-level position. 2-3 years down the road, please come back and we'll help you with the next step in your job search.
Great. Well, that's terrific to hear about. And again, you know, we have an 1,100-page bill in the Senate, which is advancing. And in that bill is a section, a title, as they say in Washington, on immigrant integration, which is really what can states and localities do to help immigrants become incorporated into their new societies after they get the green card or after they get the visa, to allow them to be here. So we've just been hearing from Welcoming Center staff and also from our colleagues at the CEO Council for Growth. I know that some people may not have been able to use the chat function in the Google Hangout that we're doing here. So again, I'm going to encourage you, you're welcome to tweet your questions to us at either Amanda Welcoming or Welcoming Center. Or if you prefer, you can email a question to info@welcomingcenter.org. That's info@welcomingcenter.org. So one question I would like to address is around diversity of immigrants. Sometimes in the immigration conversation, we sort of start to think of immigration as monolithic, but Pennsylvania is a great example that immigrants come from all over the world. Jana, can you tell us a little bit about some of the different countries that the job seekers you're serving are coming from?
Well, last year we served job seekers from 116 countries, and most of our clients, like top of the 5 countries what we served last year were Haiti, Uzbekistan, Liberia, Ukraine, and Ethiopia.
So Haiti and Uzbekistan, not 2 countries that we necessarily hear at the top of the immigration debate, but I think an important acknowledgement that immigrant communities are very diverse and in a number of different ways. We also hear quite a lot around language skills and language capacity. Jana, can you talk a little bit about how you see the role of learning English? What advice do you give job seekers when it comes to learning English?
The first, our recommendation is to start to learn English in American environment. When you will get a job and have to communicate with your colleagues, it's the best English classes what you can accept.
That's
Practice, practice, and practice.
That's a great
You don't
point.
have another choice.
I say the best preparation for being in the American workplace is to be in the American workplace.
Absolutely.
Or as Jana's saying, the best English class is to be in the American workplace. And certainly that's an important part. As Congress is looking at immigration reform, there's a lot of conversation about what does becoming American look like? How does learning English happen? And certainly for some people, classes are really important. We have classes here at the Welcoming Center. We also have an online database that includes 120 classes offered by different organizations, libraries, schools, universities, church groups, all over the Philadelphia region. So again, those of you who've been viewing this and may have some questions, you're welcome to submit a question either by tweeting at us at Welcoming Center or at Amanda Welcoming, or to email your question to info@welcomingcenter.org. So one of my questions that is coming up here is for you, Herman, in terms of entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs. So you gave us a story about a man who is a business owner. Tell us about, are some of the business owners you're working with women? What have you seen as far as women starting businesses?
Yeah, there are so many women who are also in business, and in our retail corridors, the ratio is maybe something like 2 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
And you find them both in retail businesses. There are great restaurants here in Philadelphia owned by immigrant women. And women also do a lot of micro export. They buy a lot of US made jewelry, clothes, and things like that, and send back to their home countries. And that is something that is going on. And women are also in transport. I have 2 ladies that I work with that have trucks and transporting stuff all over the United States. Yeah, so they're all over.
That's terrific. Now, Herman, later this summer, you and I will be in Reading, Pennsylvania, as part of a very special event put on by the African Global Super Center. Tell us a little bit about what that event is and how it connects to this immigration reform discussion that we're having. What's the impetus for that event?
The event is meant to bring US businesses and African businesses together in an exchange environment where they can learn, connect with the people that they can use as a channel to find their products into different African markets, and also to provide an opportunity for African businesses to connect with the US businesses who can help them channel their products to the US market.
Terrific. Well, that sounds very exciting, and I'm certainly looking forward to being there with you. Claire, a question for you around membership. The Chamber, of course, is a membership organization. You mentioned that there's 5,000 members. Can you talk a little bit about how a business becomes a member? And then is the CEO Council also a membership organization? Is that an invitation organization? So can you just give us a little context about that?
Sure. The Greater Philadelphia Chamber is, as you said, a membership organization, and you can call the main number, 215-545-1234, or go to the website, greaterphilachamber.com, to find out more about joining the chamber. The CEO Council is also a membership organization, and probably the best way for folks to get connected to our work is to reach out to myself or anyone on our staff, and I guess my direct email, if it's okay, is cgreenwood@selectgreaterphila.com. And, you know, I think we broadly, sort of the family of organizations, are always looking for and welcoming new folks to the table, whether it's around these advocacy conversations or if it's getting access to the networking and events and programs that the chamber runs. And certainly any of those platforms are easily accessible to those out there.
Great, and that brings up another really important point, talking about networking. Immigrants have social networks in their home countries, and as we've already heard in this conversation today, those social networks can sometimes lead to business contacts for their businesses here in the U.S., or if they are working in the labor force here in the U.S. And not self-employed, they can lead to business contacts for their American employers. So, you know, that's an important point to keep in mind, that, you know, immigrants are not people existing in isolation, but they bring with them this wealth of home country contacts and linkages. I wanted to bring up a couple of other points that we hadn't yet gotten to in our discussion. The first really around, again, the immigration bill. Just to recap, for those of you who haven't been following every twist and turn in Washington, and there have been many, the bill is up to over 1,100 pages now, so it's a little light weekend reading if you haven't read it yet. And it's up a little in page count because some amendments have been added. And really those amendments are focusing on sort of the high profile aspects of the bill around border security and visa backlogs and issues like that. But as we've heard this morning, the Welcoming Center here in Philadelphia, a really key issue for us around immigration reform is immigrant integration. What's the process for becoming American? Not simply on paper with a green card or a citizenship certificate, but socially and politically and economically. And you've heard this morning from the Welcoming Center's president and CEO talking about our work with in a variety of contexts. You've heard from Jana Chernoff and Olga Chernoff-Gittin talking about employment issues, both for skilled immigrants, people who have a college degree or higher, as well as those who have more limited skills or more limited formal education. You've heard from my colleague Herman Nyamunga, who has talked about issues for entrepreneurs, issues of making barriers easier for them to overcome, or questions around zoning or licensing or inspections or insurance, more understandable to people who may be accustomed to doing business in a really different context. And then you've heard from our colleague Claire Greenwood, who's with the CEO Council for Growth, an affiliate of the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce here in Philadelphia, talking about the CEO Council's priorities, which include the need to make sure that graduates of American universities who have degrees in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, are able to obtain visas to be able to stay permanently in the U.S. if they'd like to do so, and around entrepreneurship and the importance of making sure that entrepreneurs who have a great idea and perhaps some venture capital funding and a really solid business plan are able to have the opportunity to stay here in the United States to launch that business if they would like to do so. Is there anything that we haven't touched on? I'm going to start with you, Olga and Jana. Anything that we haven't touched on this morning that you think is really important for Congress or for people who may be watching the broadcast this morning and are thinking about immigrant integration and thinking about immigration reform that we haven't touched on? Is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, Amanda, you've pretty much made a very complicated issue very easy to understand. It's one of the things I love most about you. I think it's very important for American lawmakers to understand the importance of jobs for immigrants. I mean, like I said, it's very important to have a job, not just for your own self-confidence, but to be able to contribute to the country that you now call home. And for immigrants, I think it's very important to find that right balance between having a community with familiar food that Herman mentioned, with familiar cultural events, but also at the same time to take advantage of this great, amazing country and take advantage of the things that it has to offer that essentially that you came here for. Yeah.
Terrific.
And I totally agree with Herman. Immigrants are very, very good assets for our country. America needs immigrants today who bring their knowledge, their skills, and continue to bring all of this sets to American economy.
Great. Well, I know that many of you watching this today have likely seen some of the videos that have been posted online by a host of organizations of immigrants sharing their stories. But if you haven't yet had the opportunity to share your story and you'd like to do so, please do feel free to drop us an email at info@welcomingcenter.org and let us know that you're interested in sharing your immigration story. Either as a first-generation immigrant to the U.S. or perhaps a family immigration story. I'm going to turn now back to our guest, Claire Greenwood. Claire, is there anything that we haven't touched on today in the conversation that you think is particularly important to add?
I guess the only other thing I would add, and I think Herman has something he wants to add as well, is that we're sort of this message, certainly at least our perspective, is echoed across the country from lots of business advocacy organizations. We're in particularly engaged in two large national coalitions on this work, Business for Skilled Worker Immigration, and a coalition of about 17 regional business organizations nationwide, the National Metropolitan Business Alliance, that are really focused on pushing on the Senate to move and Congress as a whole to move on immigration reform in this year, really. So I just want to make sure folks are aware that there is a larger network. Obviously, our region is critical to us because this is where we call home. But there is a large network of organizations across the country really focused on moving the ball forward on this issue.
That's just terrific, and I'm so glad that you emphasize that because I think it really is important. We were fortunate, we're participating in this March for Innovation. We were passed the baton, Pennsylvania, by Tennessee, which had their march a couple of days ago. Missouri will be having their march at the end of this week, I believe on Friday. It's on the 27th, so that may actually be Thursday. So this is a national effort, and there's groups from all sides of the political spectrum and all industries and backgrounds. So Herman, I'm going to take it to you to give us the last word. What would you like to add that we have not covered here yet this morning?
Yeah, I think from the small business point of view, not only the immigrant small businesses, but small businesses generally, the kind of businesses that we work with every day. I urge the lawmakers that in the process of considering this bill to really think of allocating enough resources to help these small businesses in terms of funding, whether it's through micro lenders or anything like that, but at least make some funds available so that the immigrants and other Americans who want to start businesses at that lower level can access those funds.
That's a great observation and an important point. The Small Business Administration has been a great partner of ours here in Philadelphia. We also work with some nonprofit lenders, including our friends at Finanza, who run a rotating savings and credit association, ROSCA group, and others. But there's always a need for government to recognize that part of fostering economic vitality is making sure that entrepreneurs at the entry point and in the early years of their businesses have access to capital that they need to expand and improve their businesses. So thank you for that important point, Herman. Again, thank you for joining us today. This is Amanda Bergson-Shilcock here at the Welcoming Center for New Pennsylvanians. We appreciate that you took the time out from your morning to join us, and we hope to hear from you in follow-up comments. Please do feel free to share the link to this video chat. It will be posted on our website shortly. It should already be on our Google Hangout page, or our Google Plus page rather. We'll also be tweeting links later. If you're on Twitter, please do tweet about the March for Innovation, hashtag #IMarch and hashtag PA. And keep your eyes open because the day will be going on. We'll be passing the baton to other organizations, including our friends at the Pennsylvania Immigration and Citizenship Coalition, who will be on with a group of DREAM activists, young people who are advocating for immigration reform today at 3 p.m. So thank you again. We're going to be ending now.